fluorescent hum is a lonely symphony in the vast, silent expanse of the Northwood Mall. It's a sound I've grown accustomed to, a constant companion during my graveyard shifts. My name is Arthur, and for the past 2 years, I've been the night security guard for what is now a mausoleum of commerce. Dust motes dance in the slivers of moonlight filtering through the skylights, illuminating rows of shuttered storefronts, their once vibrant displays now shrouded in tarp or simply empty. The air smells of stale popcorn and forgotten dreams. Most nights, it's just me, the echoes of my footsteps, and the occasional scuttling of a rat. But tonight, something is different. Something is profoundly, chillingly wrong. It started subtly, a flicker caught in my peripheral vision as I rounded the corner of the food court, past the skeletal remains of what was once Burger Blast. My patrol route is etched into my brain, a predictable loop designed to cover every inch of this sprawling, deserted structure. I carry a heavy-duty flashlight, its beam cutting through the gloom like a lifeline, and a two-way radio that usually only crackles with static or my own bored check-ins. My standard procedure dictates a thorough sweep, checking all exterior doors, ensuring no homeless individuals have found refuge, and confirming that the alarm system remains armed and undisturbed. Tonight, however, that flicker wasn't an optical illusion. It was a faint, almost imperceptible glow emanating from deep within the mall's forgotten wing, the section that housed the smaller, less popular stores, the ones that were the first to close when the mall began its slow, inevitable decline. My heart gave a faint, unsettling thump. Every protocol, every rule drilled into me by my predecessor Jenkins screamed that this was impossible. All power to the individual storefronts, save for the emergency lights and essential security systems, was cut at midnight, no exceptions. But there it was, a persistent, soft yellow light, pulsing faintly like a distant, dying star. My first thought, the rational one, was a faulty circuit, a residual charge perhaps. But the light wasn't flickering randomly. It had a steady, almost rhythmic quality. I paused, listening. The usual hum of the mall's ventilation system, the distant thrum of the emergency generator, these were the only sounds. Nothing out of place, yet everything felt wrong. The silence, usually a comfort, now felt like a heavy blanket pressing down on me, muffling any potential warning. I adjusted my grip on the flashlight, the cold metal a small reassurance. My pace, usually a steady, unhurried stride, quickened almost imperceptibly. Each step echoed louder than before, reverberating through the empty corridors. The air grew colder, a damp chill that seeped into my bones, despite the mall's relatively stable internal temperature. As I drew closer, the light intensified, resolving into a distinct, albeit diffused glow. It was coming from the Curious Corner, a novelty shop that had specialized in obscure collectibles and cheap gag gifts. It had been empty for at least 3 years, its windows long since boarded up from the inside, a dusty for lease sign peeling from the glass. Now the boards were gone, or rather they weren't visible from this angle. The light was spilling out from within, through what looked like a narrow gap in the former display window. My mind raced, trying to conjure a logical explanation. Power surge? A squatter with a battery-powered lamp? But the quality of the light, its peculiar warmth, didn't fit either scenario. It felt ancient, almost organic. I reached the entrance to the wing, the automatic doors long since deactivated, now just heavy glass panels. I pushed one open, the sound of grinding metal echoing eerily. The light inside the Curious Corner pulsed brighter, a beacon in the oppressive darkness. My hand instinctively went to my radio. "Control, this is Arthur on patrol. I'm investigating an anomaly in the West Wing, store number 307. Unauthorized light source detected." The only response was static, a harsh, grating sound that made me wince. I tried again, louder, nothing. The isolated feeling intensified, a prickle of unease crawling up my spine. I was alone, truly alone. I advanced slowly, my flashlight beam sweeping across the deserted corridor. The storefronts on either side were dark, their signs faded, their interiors cavernous and forgotten. But the Curious Corner glowed, a single, defiant ember in a field of ash. As I neared, I could make out details. The light wasn't coming from the main sales floor, but from deeper within the store, perhaps from a back room or storage area. And it wasn't a static glow. It was moving, shifting, like someone was carrying a lantern through the aisles. I pushed open the unlocked service door, the one usually reserved for deliveries. It creaked ominously on its hinges. The air inside was thick with the scent of old paper, dust, and something else. Something indescribably sweet, like decaying flowers or forgotten incense. The store was dark, save for the persistent, shifting light coming from the back. It played across the shelves, illuminating strange, shadowy shapes. I strained my eyes, trying to define them. Were they merchandise? Old display mannequins? The light was too faint, too indirect to tell. I stepped inside, my boots crunching on something gritty on the floor. Broken glass? Dried leaves? I didn't dare look down. My gaze was fixed on that light. It moved again, slowly, deliberately, as if an unseen hand guided it. A low, almost inaudible hum seemed to accompany it now, a sound that vibrated more in my chest than in my ears. It wasn't the mall's hum. This was different, deeper, more primal. I drew my small, extendable baton, a useless piece of plastic against whatever might be lurking, but it offered a small measure of psychological comfort. I edged around a stack of dusty, empty cardboard boxes, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The light was closer now, just beyond a tall, narrow display shelf laden with what looked like antique globes and tarnished brass instruments. I could almost feel its warmth on my face. Then I heard it. A faint, rustling sound, like dry leaves being disturbed, followed by a soft, almost ethereal whisper. It wasn't words, not exactly. More like a breath, a sigh, a secret shared with the empty air. My blood ran cold. This wasn't a squatter. This wasn't a power surge. This was beyond anything I had ever encountered in my lonely patrols. I peered around the shelf, my flashlight still off, relying on the strange light from within. My breath hitched. There, in the middle of what used to be aisle 7, where the novelty magic tricks were once displayed, was a single, ornate lantern. It wasn't electric. It was an old-fashioned oil lamp, its wick burning with an unnaturally bright, steady flame. And it wasn't alone. Surrounding the lantern, arranged in a precise, almost ritualistic circle, were dozens of small, porcelain dolls. Their eyes, wide and unblinking, seemed to follow me, even though I knew they were just painted glass. They were dressed in faded Victorian-era clothing, their tiny hands clasped or outstretched in various poses. And then I saw it. One of the dolls, positioned directly opposite me, its face cracked and yellowed, had a single, miniature, dried rose clutched in its porcelain fingers. And its head was slowly, almost imperceptibly turning. My mind screamed for me to run, to retreat, to call for backup that wouldn't come. But a morbid curiosity, a terrifying compulsion, rooted me to the spot. I couldn't tear my eyes away from that doll. Its head continued to turn, slowly, deliberately, until its empty gaze was fixed directly on me. And then the whisper came again, clearer this time, seeming to emanate from all the dolls at once. A chorus of tiny, dry voices, all speaking the same single word. Welcome. The air grew heavy, the scent of decaying flowers overwhelming. The lantern's flame flared, casting long, dancing shadows that seemed to writhe and contort, mimicking grotesque figures. I felt a cold touch on my ankle, a fleeting brush against my skin, sending a jolt of ice through my veins. I gasped, stumbling backward, tripping over something unseen. My flashlight clattered to the ground, its beam dying out as it hit the floor. Now, only the lantern's unnatural light remained, illuminating the circle of dolls, their unblinking eyes all fixed on me. I scrambled to my feet, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. The whispers intensified, a cacophony of dry, rustling sounds like pages turning in an ancient book. I could feel their collective gaze, a tangible weight pressing down on me. My hands searched frantically for the door, my fingers fumbling in the oppressive darkness that now surrounded the illuminated circle. I needed to get out. I needed to breathe. As I stumbled towards the exit, my eyes still darting back to the dolls, I noticed something else, something I hadn't seen before. On the wall behind the circle, etched into the dusty plaster, were symbols. Not graffiti, but intricate, almost arcane markings, glowing faintly with the same strange light as the lantern. They formed a complex pattern, reminiscent of constellations or an ancient, forgotten language. And beneath them, scrawled in what looked like dried, dark liquid, was a single phrase. The Watchers awaken. I finally reached the service door, tearing it open and bursting out into the mall corridor, gasping for air. The cold mall air, once chilling, now felt a welcome embrace. I didn't look back. I ran. I ran past Burger Blast, past the silent food court, past the rows of forgotten stores, my foot's echoing like gunshots in the vast emptiness. I didn't stop until I reached the security office, slamming the heavy steel door shut behind me, fumbling with the deadbolt. I collapsed into my chair, trembling, trying to rationalize what I had just seen, what I had just heard. A prank? A hallucination brought on by sleep deprivation? But the smell of decaying flowers still clung to my clothes, and the image of that turning doll head, those unblinking eyes, was seared into my mind. I looked at the security monitors, expecting to see something, anything. But the cameras in the West Wing were all static, a blank, buzzing screen. How could that be? They had been working perfectly just an hour ago. I pulled out my phone, my hands still shaking, and called my supervisor, Mr. Henderson. It rang once, twice, then went straight to voicemail. I left a garbled message, trying to explain, trying to sound coherent. Mr. Henderson, it's Arthur. Something's wrong at the mall. West Wing, store 307. Lights. Dolls. I don't know what I saw. I need help. Call me back. The silence in the office was deafening. I sat there, staring at the blank monitor, trying to process it all. The rational part of my brain screamed for an explanation. The primal part screamed for escape. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that I couldn't just walk away. This wasn't over. Not yet. I spent the rest of the night huddled in the security office, jumping at every shadow, every creak. The sun finally began to rise, its first rays piercing through the skylights, chasing away the oppressive darkness. The mall, in the light of dawn, looked almost normal again. Almost. But I knew what lurked in aisle 7. I knew what whispered in the silence. When Mr. Henderson finally called back, hours later his voice was gruff, annoyed. Arthur, what was that message? Are you feeling all right? You sound like you've seen a ghost. I tried to explain again, calmly this time, detailing everything. The light, the dolls, the turning head, the whispers, the symbols. He listened, his silence heavy on the line. Arthur, he finally said, his voice softer now, almost empathetic. Store 307, the Curious Corner, has been completely empty for at least 3 years. The power was disconnected from that entire section of the wing 3 years ago, and the cameras in that section have been offline for at least 6 months. We never bothered to fix them, said it wasn't worth the cost for a dead wing. My blood ran cold for the second time that night, empty for at least 3 years. Power disconnected, cameras offline. So what had I seen? What had I heard? And who or what had left that lantern burning in aisle 7? I ended the call, my mind a whirlwind of terrifying possibilities. I had to go back. I knew it was foolish, but I had to. I needed answers, or I would never sleep again. That afternoon, I returned to the mall, not for my shift, but for myself. I walked straight to the West Wing, my heart hammering in my chest. The service door to the Curious Corner was still ajar, just as I had left it. I pushed it open, my flashlight beam cutting through the gloom. The air was still thick with that strange, sweet scent. I walked directly to aisle 7. The lantern was gone. The dolls were gone. The symbols on the wall were gone. The plaster was smooth, dusty, undisturbed. There was no trace of anything I had seen, no broken glass, no dried leaves, no ominous markings. It was just an empty, forgotten storefront, exactly as it should have been. But as I turned to leave, my flashlight beam swept across the back wall, and for a fleeting second, I caught it. Not a symbol, not a doll, but a single, miniature, dried rose, pressed flat against the dusty wall, almost invisible against the faded paint. And beneath it, etched faintly into the plaster, a single, almost imperceptible word. Soon. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. I knew then that it wasn't a hallucination. It was real. Whatever had been there, whatever had awakened, it had left a calling card. I stood there for a long time, staring at that single dried rose, the final, chilling piece of a puzzle I didn't want to solve. I still work security at the Northwood Mall. Every night, the hum of the fluorescent lights is my only company. But now, every night, I find myself lingering a little longer in the West Wing, listening for whispers, searching for that peculiar glow. And every night, I wonder when soon will finally arrive. If you've ever felt a presence in a place that should be empty, or seen something that defies explanation, you know the dread. Perhaps you've encountered your own unexplained anomalies? Share your experiences in the comments below. I'd be interested to know if I'm truly alone in this.